day of climbing for 12 people on Mount Hood turns into a struggle for survival.
Total 3 DOS!
When rescuers arrive at the scene, they too become victims.
Oh my goodness. Oh, fellas.
Turning a routine climb into a perilous expedition to the edge. Oregon's Mount Hood is the most climbed mountain in America. And worldwide, it's second only to Japan's Mount Fuji. More than 10,000 climbers try to reach its summit every year. The allure of Mount Hood to beginning climbers is that it looks relatively easy, but looks can be deceiving. In the last century, Mount Hood has claimed more than 100 lives. Oregon rescue units fight this statistic every day. Lieutenant Colonel, formerly Major, Dan Hokanson is the commander of Oregon's National Guard Air Rescue Team. He's in the business of saving lives.
Our mission here primarily is medical evacuation, as well as high-altitude rescues of the Cascade Mountain range that we have through here in Oregon.
At more than 11,000 feet, Hood creates sudden whiteouts and up to 140-mile-an-hour winds, turning deadly in a matter of minutes.
This is what we train for year-round. Basically, we're doing our job.
But no matter how prepared the rescuers are, Mount Hood is full of surprises. As glaciers flow down the mountain, they can split a deep crack in the snowfield, forming a crevasse. Mount Hood is carved with these gashes, some visible, some not. Falling into a crevasse is just one of the many hazards mountaineers must face. Survival expert Lawrence Gonzalez, the author of Deep Survival, can recite a litany of Hood's dangers.
It's steep and icy. It has whiteouts that can come up within a matter of minutes and blind people, and then it gets very serious near the top.
The danger doesn't stop the thousands of climbers who try to summit Mount Hood every year. Climbers like off-duty firefighter Cleve Joyner. Cleve's an experienced climber, but this will be his first summit attempt on Mount Hood.
I just like the outdoors, the adventure, and the challenge. Just getting to the top of a mountain is a pretty awesome experience.
An awesome experience that he will share with his 14-year-old son, Cole Joyner.
When we set the date, I was excited just to go climb it because we'd been talking about it for so long.
Part of the whole thing with this climb was it was kind of a reconnecting.
The Joyners want today's climb to be a memorable father-son experience, and it will be, but not as they imagined.
Jeff Pierce was the deputy fire marshal in West Linn, and I had noticed that he had a picture at his desk of Mount Hood, and he had this poem that later found out was from his father and he and their relationship in climbing Mount Hood and the outdoors. And I asked him about Mount Hood and told him I wanted to climb it. I told him I wanted to climb it with Cole.
Off-duty firefighter Jeff Pierce jumps at the chance. For him, Mount Hood's a family tradition, passed down from his father, who had been a leader in a local climbing club.
It's kind of where I got my start climbing, is following him into the mountains, and unfortunately died when I was 18.
To honor his father, Jeff scattered his dad's ashes over the mountain he loved to climb. Now he prepares to return, this time with Cleve and Cole and 3 other firefighting friends.
Morning!
Morning.
Jeremiah Moffett, off-duty firefighter, and his new girlfriend, Selena Maestas, paramedic. They met at the hospital, saving lives.
I knew that she really liked hiking and camping, so
I figured, hey, it's a new adventure that we can do together to start out our relationship.
I'd never done any climbing in snow, so I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but I trusted in the people I was with.
There is a lot at risk there on any climb, and so you want to balance your climb out. If you were to have a lot of those people inexperienced, that's a bad balance. So I usually try to find one experienced person for every newbie on the mountain.
To raise the level of experience on his team, Jeff recruits another veteran climber, off-duty firefighter Dennis Butler. After their leader, Jeff Pierce, he's the most experienced climber on their team.
Growing up around the area, Mount Hood's always the icon on the horizon.
As Jeff's team gathers at the base, two other groups of climbers are already making their run for the summit. A team of 4 business executives, anchored by Bill Ward, an experienced climber who summited Hood before. Bill is roped together with businessmen Harry Slutter and Chris Kern. Bill's also invited his longtime friend, Rick Reed. Rick is the only novice climber in their group. Just above the executives is a 2-man team led by expert climber Tom Hillman. Tom is a Methodist minister who's as avid about his faith as he is about climbing. Tom and his close friend John Biggs are trying to summit the highest peak in each state. They're part of an elite group called the High Pointers.
I think high pointers generally are a little eccentric, a little on the obsessive-driven side. I've climbed the highest point in 48 states.
They want Mount Hood to be the next prize on their list. At the base of the mountain, Jeff and his team of off-duty firefighters pack tightly into a snowcat. It's a 30-minute ride up to the Palmer Glacier, where they'll begin their climb. Their mission, to summit Mount Hood and get back safely. Before their approach, Jeff collects his team to review some last-minute details.
Jeff gave us kind of the lowdown on what's going to happen here and how we're going to climb.
The novice climbers are nervous.
It seemed fairly difficult. It was really steep, really icy.
Jeff has to make a critical choice. Do they continue up the mountain, or do they take the time to make an emergency plan?
The most important thing of that whole meeting was we talked about if anything happened, who would be in charge of the technical side of it.
If there's an accident on the
Jeff
mountain
makes
today,
his plan.
we will respond.
In the event of an accident, he and Dennis will be in charge of rope rescue.
Not a problem.
Great.
Professional first responders Jeremiah and Selena will be in charge of patient care.
Take patient care.
Everybody was pretty exhilarated. You could sense that for people that had never really been up on a mountain for any length of time, there was some kind of nervous energy. They were really looking forward to it, but they didn't really know what to expect.
After some 6 hours of climbing, the two high pointers, Tom Hillman and John Biggs, make it to the summit first. They proudly add another of America's high points to their list.
Congratulations.
Hot on their heels is the executive team, anchored by Bill Ward.
All right, good job. All right.
The spectacular summit view seduces their senses, and the two teams celebrate as one.
Okay, got it. Good. Yes.
Everything seems perfect. But below them, Jeff's team encounters an ominous sign. The mountain's icy surface is dangerously slick.
Stop, put our crampons on.
I was kind of nervous because my footing, I just kept sliding down. I'd take a couple steps and slide back a step.
So Jeff said, well, you know, we should probably put our crampons now.
Crampons, helmets, rope, and ice axes give climbers the edge on a mountain. Sometimes the difference between life and death. But Jeff wants to give his team members an even bigger edge. He decides it's time to teach them a critical safety technique, the self-arrest.
You self-arrest, you bring the ice axe up in front of you, and you take the pick of the axe, and you lay across the snow, and you basically rotate the pick into the snow. And this, as it drags through the snow, essentially controls your fall, brings you to a stop.
I wanted to learn it, but at the same time, I was thinking, well, we're not going to use this. Why don't we need to know this? But
I think the mood was pretty good. Everybody kind of chuckled watching each other, you know, tumble and fall and catching themselves, and everybody did really well. And, you know that it's serious, and you know that you need to practice it.
The team enjoys the exercise, not knowing that in a matter of moments, their practice will be put to the test. On an apparently perfect day, 3 groups of climbers attempt to summit Oregon's implacable Mount Hood. But even as 2 teams reach their goal, the mountain's icy slopes are growing slicker and more dangerous. On the summit, the executives, anchored by Bill Ward, enjoy their success with the high pointers, led by Tom Hillman.
Just did the attaboys and having a good time, and hey, we made it. Just chit-chat, celebrating.
But it's too early for celebration. According to survival expert Lawrence Gonzalez, the hardest part of a climb is the descent.
It's the most dangerous, the most accidents happen on descent, and it's the trickiest. It's the easiest to fall on descent. So just at the time when you let your guard down, you need it the most.
Several hundred feet below the summit, the firefighters team launches into the next phase of their climb.
The Hogsback Ridge at 10,000 feet. Essentially the ramp to the top. It's the last chance for climbers to decide if the conditions are right for a run to the summit. As the firefighters approach the Hogsback Ridge, conditions appear ideal.
The weather was perfect. You know, the sun was coming up over the horizon. You could see the mountain shadow. There was calm air. It was an awesome morning.
At the summit, the high pointers rope up for their descent.
As we're getting ready to go down, John says, well, why don't you lead?
John's decision, asking Tom to lead, makes sense. Tom is the more experienced climber.
Because the risk, of course, is more as you're going down than when you're going up.
Closing in on them from below, Jeff's team of firefighters gets better traction as the sun softens the snow. But the angle is getting steeper and the mood more serious, especially for more inexperienced climbers like Selena Maestas.
I think through the climb, kind of noticed that Selena was a little more out of her element. That she was pretty nervous about it and a little scared, and I could see it at certain points.
Come on up. Welcome to the Hogsback.
You know, when we got to the Hogsback, everybody was getting pretty excited. In short time, we're going to be on the summit. So people getting pretty pumped up, you know. You sit them down, they get a good break, they get to eat some food, get their energy going again.
Then, Mount Hood sends a chilling warning.
Whoa, my cell phone.
Jeremiah's cell phone basically got out of his hands, and as soon as it hit the snow and the slope, it sails down the mountain.
Jeff actually started chasing after it, which freaked me out because he's running down the hill in his crampons like it's nothing.
And I was like, let it go. You know, and then we just kind of watched it just sail off down the slope, down to Devil's Kitchen, which is essentially some hot rocks that melts the snow off.
It was making me very nervous because it looked like anyone could just slide down at any moment.
You know, this kind of takes people back a little bit. It's like, wow, you know, it's a ways down there. It's like, that's why we have to know how to self-arrest and why we practice that so much on the way up.
Practice makes perfect, but on Mount Hood, you may get only one chance to get it right.
I got a really bad feeling, and so I was thinking about just telling him, I'm going to stay here and you guys can go to the top. I started to kind of cry a little bit, just like teary eyes, and he asked me what was wrong because my nose was getting red, so I think he could tell.
Jeremiah tries to comfort his girlfriend.
She said, you know, I'm a little scared up here, and I don't think she realized how steep it was going to be up there.
I mean, if you slide, you got a long ways to go until you stop. We had a discussion on the way up that no one was allowed to die.
The executives, anchored by Bill Ward, decide it's their turn to begin the descent. Roping themselves together, they head down the mountain. At the top, Bill Ward is the critical anchorman, using his ice axe to secure the rope. The four men are each tied 35 feet apart on a 9mm rope. The technique is called belaying. If one climber falls, his team secures the rope, creating an anchor to break the fall.
When you're a mountaineer, a serious mountaineer, the rope is part of a brotherhood. It's part of a commitment to your partner, to your team. But there are cases where the rope can be deadly.
If a climber can't arrest a fall, one misstep can pull an entire team off the mountain.
Several hundred feet below, the firefighters' team leader, Jeff Pierce, is dealing with this very issue as his team ropes up.
Selena wants to be tethered to her boyfriend, Jeremiah. Cleve wants to be roped to his son, Cole. Jeff has to make a critical choice. Does he allow team members to choose their own roping partners, or does he make the choice according to mountain tradition?
It really kind of surprised people when I separated, family members. And mountain tradition is separate the family members. That way, if something bad does happen, you don't have an entire family taken out in a climbing accident.
I think that was a pretty strong message right there on what we were in for. So.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah gave Dennis good instructions to take care of me. And then the three of them, Jeremiah, Jeff, and Cole, went first, and we waited till they were safely a distance away, and then we started up the mountain.
Selena's apprehension offers only a hint of what's in store. After 30 minutes on the summit, the high pointers, led by Tom Hillman, rope together and make their way slowly down the mountain. Just above them are the executives, anchored by Bill Ward. Tethered with 35 feet of rope between each of them, they creep down the side of the summit. Bill Ward, still at the top, guides them down, his rope still anchored to his ice axe. Farther down the mountain, Jeff's group is stopped at a giant crevasse, known locally as the Bergschrund. The gaping crack in the snow is more than 20 feet deep. They can cross it on a shaky snow bridge, or they can detour around it, putting them squarely in the fall line of the climbers above. They have to decide. Do they take the precarious snow bridge across the crevasse, or do they hike around it, putting themselves at risk should anything happen to the climbers above?
In a more experienced group again, I wouldn't have had any reservations going over a snow bridge that could possibly collapse if you knew that you had people on your team that could arrest a fall like that.
But Jeff and Dennis are the only climbing pros on the firefighter team.
A lot of people have died up there over the years, and it's always in the back of your mind.
The feedback I got was people just rather go around the Bergschrund. So that's what we did.
Jeff leads Cole and Jeremiah around the crevasse.
So now I'm headed on around the Bergschrund, and I am traversing across up above it. And I've got several things I'm thinking about. One, I want to distance myself from the Bergschrund a little bit, because if somebody does fall, I want to give them a little bit of time to self-arrest. At the same time, the air's getting thinner, and heading up straight up the mountain, tires people out real fast.
Dennis, Selena, and Cleve watch intently, knowing they're next to go around.
Selena's behind me. She was on the other rope team. I looked down at her once, I think, before we got to the crevasse, and just kind of gave her a smile.
A few hundred feet above them, someone else's misstep is about to turn a routine climb into a test of survival. With the rest of his climbing team off the summit, Bill Ward pulls his ice axe from its anchored position.
They had 4 people stretched out on a rope 35 feet apart, and the top man was the only thing holding them to the mountain. The assumption here is that the top guy won't fall. Well, the top man fell.
I heard yelling.
The first thing I hear is falling.
I heard someone yell, fall. And since I was looking down, I didn't know if it was someone on my team, if it was someone behind us, above us.
Picking up speed, Bill can't seem to arrest his fall. Rick Reed is struck and pulled down the mountain by Bill's hurtling weight.
The executive team members were being launched into the air as they came down the mountain. They weren't just sliding, they were vaulting and tumbling. It's just a tremendous amount of force.
Harry Slutter sees a blur out of the corner of his eye. He drops to the snow and digs his ice axe into the mountain.
And I first thought they were going to stop, self-arrest. But, you know, half a second later, I realized there's no way. They're coming down.
Then the entanglement of rope and bodies hits Chris Kern, hurling him backwards into the air and shattering his pelvis.
As everybody's laying down and sliding in different directions, some of them are tumbling.
With every ounce of strength in his body, Harry digs deeper into the snow in a blind effort to arrest the fall.
Once that top man slipped, he was going probably 30 miles an hour before he met the next man and pulled him off. And that's more than anyone can stop.
By the time they hit Harry, the 3 falling climbers are a force equal to a 1,000-pound sledgehammer. Still clutching his ice axe, Harry is ripped down the mountain with his friends. The High Pointers are next.
Hillman and Biggs were sitting ducks. They were on the mountain below the executive team, and they couldn't get out of the way.
I saw the other climber fall into our rope. When I looked up, I saw John basically picked off and hit like a billiard ball.
The impact of 4 men sliding 800 feet in a matter of seconds crushes John Biggs and launches him several feet into the air.
When they hit Biggs, they were certainly going fast enough to have killed him at that point.
Knowing that he was next in line to be pulled down the mountain by the tumbling mass of climbers, Tom does the only thing he can.
I dug in both crampons and laid down on my ice axe and said, okay, here we go. Said, okay, God, I need your help right now.
In a matter of seconds, the force of the fall wrenches Tom off the mountain, ripping his shoulder from its socket. He becomes the 6th man to get caught in this horrific human snowball.
I saw a couple guys sliding down at us.
It's like dominoes, you know. I'm watching them fall, and it just yanks them right off the mountain.
Jeff Pierce, the firefighter and highly trained climb leader, shouts frantically to his team to move right.
Move right! Move right!
But there's no time. Jeremiah and Cole dive into a rest position, just like they practiced. It doesn't work.
It happened so fast.
Right as I looked up, I saw someone sliding sideways at me and pulled my head back down and got hit.
Jeremiah is immediately knocked unconscious and dragged violently downhill. Jeff watches as 7 human projectiles tangled in rope and quills of crampon blades plunge towards the crevasse. Still attached to Jeremiah's rope, it's only seconds before Cole and Jeff are ripped from their arrest positions into the tangle of falling bodies.
I thought, oh, I'm going to get hit, because if you make that imaginary line, it was right on top of us, and I thought for sure I was going to get hit.
Like a runaway train, 9 bodies plummet into the depths of the crevasse.
And then it was quiet, and I put my head up, and there was no one there. Everyone was gone.
If I just close my eyes, this will all go away. And then my next thought was, Cole's down there. I thought to myself that, you know, they could be dead. In fact, they're probably all dead.
Beautiful day on Mount Hood becomes a calamity. The last climber to leave the summit, Bill Ward, slips and falls. His inability to stop himself unleashes a relentless wave of violent collisions. Rick Reed is hit first, then Chris Kern and Harry Slutter. Tangled in their own ropes, crampons, and backpacks, the group crashes into the high pointers. John Biggs and Tom Hillman are the next victims to be snatched off the mountain. With 1,500 pounds of force, they smash into Jeremiah Moffett. His rope jerks 14-year-old Cole Joyner into the melee. Still in the arrest position, Jeff Pierce is plucked off the mountain, his ice axe sending up a rooster tail of ice behind him. Clustered together, the three groups of 9 climbers disappear into a deep crevasse. On the edge of the crevasse, having barely escaped the fall, Dennis, Cleve, and Selena have no idea who is injured or who is dead.
Jeff!
Inside the crevasse, heaps of twisted bodies litter the snow. Jeff Pierce is stunned to find himself upright, and except for a leg gash from one of his own crampons, uninjured.
I'm like, wow, nothing's broke. You know, I'm not hurt. So I scanned the scene out in front of me to my left, and here's everybody that got there before me.
Jeremiah comes to, with a concussion, back injuries, and a crushed hand.
Jeremiah?
Went to take a deep breath, and my chest felt like it was going to explode, and that's when I kind of realized that I might be one of the hurt ones.
Jeff immediately springs into rescue mode. Going from one body to the next, he quickly assesses the victims. He spots someone who isn't moving. Jeff checks for a pulse.
Hello?
It's John Biggs. He's dead. And for all Cleve Joyner knows, so is his son Cole.
Dennis had actually made it up to the crevasse and was looking in, and I said, "How's Cole?" He said, "I don't know, I don't see him."
I realize that we've got a multiple patient scene. And for me, it's literally, it's take off the climbing helmet and put my work helmet on. I'm now the firefighter again, and it's time to go to work.
Peering down inside the crevasse, Dennis Butler calls to Jeff. Jeff tells him he needs a haul system to get the injured out. Harry Slutter regains consciousness with his ice axe still in his hand. Tom Hillman has a serious head injury and is in shock.
Where you hurt?
My back.
What's your name? What's your name?
Chris Kern awakes folded in half, jammed between rocks. His pelvis, shoulder, leg, and wrist are broken. Jeff knows they'll need more help to evacuate the injured.
I hollered up to Dennis, make the call. Now we've got 7 patients, 1's DOS, which means dead on the scene.
Still not knowing if his son Cole is dead or alive, Cleve makes the emergency call.
When I turned on the cell phone, Cole had been playing with it, and there was a message on there, and you know your message always comes up on the cell phone. It's either your name or whatever. Well, this one said, "I love you, Dad, Cole."
Meanwhile, on a lower shelf of the crevasse, Jeff discovers the full magnitude of the tragedy.
To get down, I literally had to wedge myself between the 2 walls, like I was climbing down into a chimney.
He finds Bill Ward, who has suffocated, and Rick Reed, who mumbles incoherently just before he dies.
911, what's the location of your emergency? This is on Mount Hood, on the south side, about 800 feet from the peak. We have 7 people down, possibly 4 injured. They fell into the crevice.
An operator quickly routes Cleve's 911 call for help to the Oregon Emergency Management Office. The office issues a statewide alert to all ground and air rescue units.
I got paged that they needed me up in operations immediately, so I called and found out that there was a rescue mission on Mount Hood.
Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hokinson, the commander of Oregon's National Guard Air Rescue Team, orders the crews of 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters to get ready. Back on top of the mountain, Jeff's team carefully pulls Chris Kern out of the crevasse. Still in shock from their injuries, Harry Slutter and Tom Hillman watch as Chris is laid out in the snow. Selena suppresses her fears and becomes a paramedic for Chris.
He came out, and I basically just did a quick triage or once over and looking at his injuries and asked him what was hurting and trying to kind of assess where he was at. He was very badly banged up, and he would constantly complain about being cold and being in so much pain. And he was in and out of consciousness, which was extremely scary for me.
Suddenly, the sound of helicopters catches everyone's attention.
Is that for me?
He would ask, is that for me, is that for me? And I'd have to tell him, no, it's not.
Unfortunately, they're news choppers, prepared to report, not rescue.
That killed me.
But what they'll next capture on live TV will shock the world. The Timberline Lodge parking lot turns into a circus, jammed with satellite news trucks and rescue personnel from around the state.
We put the news on, and we were actually watching it on the news.
At Air Force headquarters, Special Forces rescue parajumpers Andrew Canfield and Darren Shore watch the news coverage closely. They can't know that before long, they too will be making headlines. Their commanding officer gives them the order to mobilize.
Your body just fills with, with like excitement and anticipation of going on a mission to go help somebody. So you get that really pumped feeling.
With over 50 mountain rescues to his credit, Portland Mountain Rescue member Steve Rawlins is also called to the scene of the accident.
The trick about mountaineering is small decisions tend to have very big consequences, and nature isn't very forgiving. You make a mistake and you may pay the price.
With lives at stake, Steve Rawlins and Portland Mountain Rescue hike towards the crevasse. Moments before his Black Hawks take off from Mount Hood, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hokanson gets a call from Oregon Emergency Management to stand down. The Air Force and their Pave Hawk rescue helicopter are taking over the operation.
My helicopters are on the runway. They can be there in 23 minutes. Once we got the call to stand down, obviously I was very frustrated because we had our crews, they were ready to go, they were fully equipped, and I knew they could execute the mission safely and quickly.
Lieutenant Colonel Hokanson also knows that a high-altitude rescue may require his lighter helicopters. The Air Force Pave Hawks could be too heavy.
They're similar with a drivetrain to the Pave Hawk, but they run about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds lighter on the gross weight of the aircraft. The big advantage there is obviously the heavier you are, the less power margin or power you have available at high altitudes.
It's a distinction that will soon turn out to be crucial. Up on the mountain, a relieved Cleve has at last learned that his son Cole is alive.
There was emotion going on, but it's kind of like, you know, if I break down or whatever, I'm pretty much useless to everybody.
Still in the crevasse, Cole helps Jeff hoist the injured Jeremiah up to Cleve and Dennis. Jeremiah is in pain. Selena, still attending to Chris Kern, stops for a moment when she sees her boyfriend emerge from the deadly crack in the mountain.
When Jeremiah came out screaming, I just looked over and said, "Are you all right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I know he's going to lie to me a little bit, but he was breathing. And, you know, when you are in the field, if someone's breathing and talking to you, I'm not too worried about it. He's alive, and that's what, you know, matters.
Cole finally climbs out of the crevasse for an emotional reunion with his father, Cleve.
Glad to see you.
I walked up and I gave him a big hug and told him I loved him and I was proud of him. And he told me to get me off this damn mountain.
After getting a direct order to stand down, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hokanson acts on a gut instinct. Making a critical decision, he sends his team of lightweight Black Hawk helicopters anyway.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Nick. I'm going to override their order. I don't think they know what's actually going on up there like you do, okay? I realized the individual did not have the most recent information, and he was making decisions based on inaccurate information. I'll send 2 aircraft. Like I said, they'll be there in 23 minutes, and I'll put 2 others on standby in case it gets any worse. Rather than spend an hour or 2 to try and discuss that, I just felt right now there's people hurt, they need to be saved, so we need to get the helicopters, and I'll deal with that later.
The Blackhawks rush towards Mount Hood. The Air Force Pavehawks are only moments from liftoff.
You have to weigh the benefits versus the risks. And the benefits to going in and saving someone's life versus the risks of potentially losing your own life, it's a carefully weighed equation.
I really didn't know what to expect.
The Air Force pilots are about to see the mountain turn against the rescuers themselves. It's a peaceful morning on Mount Hood. Then, 9 climbers are ripped from the mountain. They plummet hundreds of feet into the depths of a giant crevasse. Some are injured, some are dead.
And then it was quiet, and I put my head up, and there was no one there. Everyone was gone.
Both air and land rescue teams come to their aid. Lieutenant Colonel Hokinson's lightweight Blackhawks reach the scene of the accident.
There's our ride. Who's going first?
It was an Army air ambulance helicopter.
I want Chris to go first.
Okay, Chris is going first. Let's get ready.
Chris Kern is the first to be loaded onto the Blackhawk and evacuated.
So the helicopter winched Chris up in a basket into the helicopter and then flew him back down to Timberline.
Dazed from his concussion, Tom Hillman is next.
His spirits were good, which made me nervous. He asked me about his friend, and I, at that point, didn't know who his friend was or what was wrong. You know, I wasn't sure who he was talking about, and I think he knew that he had died because when he said, "I think my friend's hurt."
To me, there was an incredible sense of focus and peace at that point, because to me, I really had a sense, at least my experience, was that God was with me and that I wouldn't have to do this alone.
Soon after Tom is taken off the mountain, another team joins the rescue effort. The heavier Air Force Pavehawk arrives. It's Jeremiah Moffat's turn to be lifted to safety. But Mount Hood has other plans.
So I told Jeremiah, I'd see at the hospital. I didn't know which one he was going to yet, and said our goodbyes.
I was ready to get off the mountain. It was definitely a little nerve-wracking. They're flying right over the top of you.
The Pavehawk lowers a parajumper, a PJ, to Jeremiah.
It was just picture-perfect textbook delivery for the initial drop-off of the PJ with the litter.
Jeff Pierce radios the pilot. Jeremiah's ready for pickup. And then...
Saw it start to lift off, and so I was like, okay, good, he's on his way. And then the helicopter kind of veered funny.
Suddenly, the wind shifts. Inside the cabin of the Pavehawk, Darren Shore and Andrew Canfield feel the helicopter shudder in the high altitude.
Myself and Darren are in the door, waiting to accept the patient and assisting. And the cable gets to the PJ on the ground. He hooks in the patient, hooks himself in, and just as that happens, that's when you feel the helicopter lose lift, lose power.
I don't know, maybe when an elevator first descends, you know, that's sort of a weightless.
I look up at the helicopter and I see it getting lower. I'm like, oh, this is really bad.
As this actual footage shows, at altitudes of over 10,000 feet, the heavy Pavehawk struggles to hover in place. The helicopter begins spinning out of control.
When the blades started snapping, I closed my eyes because I thought we were all going to get hit.
We all ducked on the other side of the ridge as bits and pieces of carbon fiber rotor were flying all around.
This is the mountain that my dad's ashes are on, the mountain that he took me up to climb as a teenager. And now here's this helicopter, this piece of mechanical equipment that is essentially crashing and disintegrating in front of me. And it's going ka-thump, ka-thump, ka-thump.
It was calm and still for a second, and then that's when we started to roll. If you can imagine being in a giant tumble dryer, you and a couple guys in a tumble dryer, and that's what it was like, rolling down and bouncing off of every part of the helicopter.
And I could feel it getting more and more violent, and we just kept rolling. And I thought, oh, geez, we're going all the way down.
Suddenly, the force throws Andrew from the tumbling wreckage.
I remember being shot out of the helicopter and thinking, this is wonderful. I'm outside of the helicopter. Thank God I'm safe. Then I realized, well, I'm downhill from the helicopter.
The helicopter rolls over Andrew, crushing him into the mountain. Barreling down hundreds of feet, the Pavehawk finally stops, belly up. Andrew Canfield isn't moving. Darren Shore is still inside. And what has happened to the injured Jeremiah Moffett, who is tethered to the helicopter?
Once it came to a stop and nothing happened as far as explosions, I kind of was like, okay. And then I went, oh my God, Jeremiah was attached to that.
So I was looking up and I could see the helicopter hovering over the top of me, and I could see a guy kind of hanging out the door with his hand on the cable. And then it kind of moved off to my left, out of sight.
As the Pavehawk loses control, Staff Sergeant Martin Mills makes an instinctive critical choice. Mills pushes the button that shears the hoist cable, freeing Jeremiah and saving his life.
Martin sort of lunged forward and hit the squib, which cuts the cable.
I didn't realize how close I was to dying with the helicopter until later that night.
Finally, my emotions just got the best of me, and I can't believe all that has happened in this day.
I'm just very thankful that I'm here. I don't think too many people go through 2 near-death experiences within a couple hours. And like I said, I don't know that it's actually quite hit me yet.
Miraculously, Andrew Canfield has also dodged death, thanks to his crash helmet and soft snow, which cushioned his body as the chopper rolled over him.
I'm sitting in the snow, thanking God that I'm still alive.
Only his head and neck are singed from the helicopter's engines. Steve Rawlins from Portland Mountain Rescue sprints down to Andrew. The Pavehawk crew suffers no fatalities and few injuries. Moments later, one of Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hokinson's lightweight Blackhawks arrives to airlift Jeremiah and the crew of the shattered helicopter off the mountain.
I guess it was about 15, 20 minutes from the crash to when I flew again. And it was a beautiful thing.
With the assistance of local rescue workers, everyone else walks down the mountain. Dennis Butler will never take the forces of nature for granted again.
I think it gives me a greater respect for mountains. Just the immense power that they have.
Jeremiah Moffett sees his own profession from a new perspective.
You do this job where you're going on emergency calls all the time, and it kind of gets to where you don't realize the impact you have on people. And to go through something like that and actually have had somebody save my life, I see now what it is.
And Selena Maestas has a renewed appreciation of the sweetness and brevity of life.
Life is short and you need to enjoy it, because you never know, you might be doing the thing that you love to do the most, and it could be the last day that you're here.
One year to the day after the Mount Hood tragedy, the survivors organize a memorial climb to commemorate those who lost their lives on the mountain. This time, the group makes it to the summit. This program honors the memory of those who died on Mount Hood and celebrates the heroic efforts of the rescuers.